States. It's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mark from the States. How are we doing today? I am doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for coming. Continuing on D-Day and everything associated with it. Yesterday we got to watch the speech by the King. I thought it was very good. This morning I got to watch the whole event where that speech took place. I really enjoyed it. The letters, Phil Dunster from Ted Lasso, loved him. Helen Mirren was great. Dan Snow doing the side commentary, excellent as always. Love me Dan Snow. The bit about the Americans coming was pretty funny. I thought the whole thing was really good. The reading of the child when they saw the Americans parked out on the street and then they were just gone, I thought it was very deep and moving. That was really good. So thank you to all the people who are sending me stuff. I'll get to them as quick as I can. It's just real busy, obviously, and I've got a lot of things to watch, plus still do videos. But I'll get to them. So thank you, and please keep sending them because a lot of these, while they probably don't end up on the channel, but they do end up in my memory as I watch them. So that's huge for me, and I get to learn from all those stuff. But I did skip over Prince William's speech at that event, so I can watch it later with all of you. But today we're going to visit with the history guy. Y'all know my fascination with the history guy and how it reminds me of my father and the guy he used to listen to on the car radio during our car trips. Haven't seen one of his videos in a while. This is the story about 47 Royal Marine Commando and their battle of Bessin, Port-en-Bessin, I guess. Battle of Port-en-Bessin. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's D-Day +1. It happened 80 years ago today. Go support his channel. Links to his channel and to this video are in the description. It's really important that you do. Just go over there, even one like is huge. I know a lot of you do go, but please, for me, please. It helps. It really does help him, and I enjoy his content, and I know a lot of you do as well. So please go and support the history guy. Use the links. Get over there. Do your thing. In fact, I encourage you to go watch this first before you come back. And then you can watch it with me and point out the things, of course, that I'm going to miss. Anyway, come sit on this big fake couch. After you do that, come sit on this big fake couch. I'll be gone this weekend. I think I might be back on Sunday, so I'll be able to have some videos then. But this might be the last one until then. But I hope everybody's doing well. Let's get into it.
A June 7th, 1944 report by the United Press International gave a surprisingly mild description of the state of the massive landings that had occurred on the Normandy beaches just the day before. Under the headline D-Day +1, Allies move inland from Normandy coast, the report wrote that the Allies had been able to make good their landings against surprisingly light resistance, and that they had found success with remarkably low cost. But the fact was that in France, the resistance was anything but light, and the cost anything but low.
Right.
On the day that report was written, the men of 47 Royal Marine Commando were in a desperate and bloody fight with a superior foe to take a vital port that connected the Gold and Omaha beaches. It is history that deserves to be remembered. The British National Army Museum explains that after the fall of France in June 1940, the British established a small but well-trained and highly mobile raiding and reconnaissance force known as the Commandos. They were partly inspired by the mobile commandos of the Boer War. Warfare History Network writes that the commando role was born of the decision to mount vigorous raiding operations against occupied Europe as British forces were withdrawing from France in 1940. Special forces would be needed for this role. Originally, the Commandos were derived from volunteers, mostly from infantry units. History on the Net writes, the first two troops largely contained men who had previously served in the unattached or independent infantry companies and thus were accustomed to working on their own. Initially, the volunteers had to be serving army soldiers and recruited only from certain units still in Britain, many of which had served in the Norway campaign. In 1940, some 2,000 volunteers were organized into a special service brigade. Commandos were given rigorous special training and carried out small-scale raids wherever, History on the Net writes, German forces were stationed. In 1942, the Royal Marines were also tasked with creating commando units. War History Online explains, the Royal Marines, who by tradition should have been the obvious force for the amphibious role, were then manning coastal defense batteries and mustering in Royal Marine divisions against the likely threat of German invasion. The first Royal Marine Commando units were raised in 1942. Number 47, Royal Marine Commando, was formed from the 10th Royal Marine Battalion on the 1st of August, 1943. Dr. John Forfar, a lieutenant in the Royal Army Medical Corps, was the medical officer of the 47th Royal Marine Commandos. He explained that the personnel of the commando would, in the first instance, be drawn from 10th Battalion, which was numerically considerably larger than the 420 men required for the commando. The principle was simple. Anyone who did not wish to serve could opt out. Those who wished to join 47 RM Commando had to be picked by their officers as suitable and be physically fit. Physical requirements were strict, and Forfar admits that, knowing that normal vision without spectacles was required, in his own exam he dispensed with his spectacles for the occasion, being well versed in reading the lower lines of the eye-testing chart off by heart. The 47 RM Commandos received some of the most rigorous training in the British military. The website D-Day Revisited explains that commando training was the supreme level of preparation for Normandy. Its recipe was drawn from all theaters of experience, which were building rapidly during 1942 and 1943. Tactics of the Long-Range Desert Group, the Special Air Service, and the Burman Chindits all made their contributions towards training for a changing style of warfare. By the time of the Normandy invasion, the commando units had been reorganized and the role shifted from small-scale raiding to assault brigades, and 17 commandos were organized into 4 special service brigades. Forfar and the men of 47 RM Commando were part of the 4th Special Service Brigade, and their first operation was Operation Neptune, the landings at Normandy Beach. Their mission was described in the newspaper The Independent in 2018 as one of the most daring, but perhaps least recognized raids of the Second World War.
Right.
Operation Aubrey. Their job was to take the French port town of Port-en-Bessin. Dr. Forfar wrote of the importance of the small beach town. 47 RM's D-Day objective was Port-en-Bessin, a small cliff-flanked port sited on a 15-mile stretch of rocky coastline. The website D-Day Overlord explains that its fishing port is located below a large cliff that is set up for defense by the Germans. Due to its geographical situation and the difficulties of access by the coast, the Allies refused to attempt a landing in front of the commune and decided to seize it by an assault from the land. Forfar writes that the town was between the right of the British Army landing on Gold Beach and the left of the American Army landing on Omaha Beach. The port was 12 miles from Gold Beach and 3 miles from Omaha Beach. 47 RM Commando was to be the slender link, the junction point between 2 vast armies, British and American. In addition to that connection, the Allies held a particular strategic importance for the town, which was to be used as a storage and supply point for petrol, fuel to support the expanded landings. But the town was heavily fortified. RoyalMarinesHistory.com writes that the main defenses of Port-en-Bessin were on 200-foot-high cliffs known as the western and eastern features, either side of the hollow in which the port lay. An entrenched and concreted position had been built just south of the port on the Bayou Road, with more defenses in the harbor. Forfar explains that the eastern and western features were heavily fortified strongpoints, with all-around field of fire covering approaches to the port from the sea and the approaches to the 2 features from the town. The defenses included heavy weapons and numerous weapons pits, machine gun emplacements, and fortified bunkers. As to the defenders, Forfar notes that Port-en-Bessin was defended by the German 352nd Infantry Division, the formidable first-class infantry division that was to decimate the American landing at Omaha Beach, nearby on D-Day. Taking the heavily defended town would be a challenge for even the highly trained commandos, but before they could even make the attempt, they had to make it to France. Forfar explains that the commandos were sent to the marshalling area on May 25th, He writes, "The roads were filled with guns, tanks, armored cars, strange amphibious six-wheeled vehicles called ducks, and lorry after lorry, all moving towards the docks in a steady stream." The Commando embarked on the 2nd of June. 44 notes that the Commandos passed by the Southampton home of a Marine named Scott of Q Troop on the way to the port. The Commando embarked aboard the cross-channel ferry Princess Josephine Charlotte and the smaller steamer SS Victoria, both carrying landing craft assaults, or LCAs. On board was 17-year-old Marine Kenneth Parker. Parker had lied about his age to enlist in the Marines at age 16. Purportedly, he told The Independent, because he had been fired from his job and did not want to disappoint his mother. They waited out the last few days before the scheduled landing on June 5th, and a final sleepless night as weather delayed the landing until the morning of the 6th on the two ships. Parker told The Independent that the seasickness was appalling. They watched at 0500 as the first wave, the Hampshire Regiment, loaded their LCAs. The Hampshires were scheduled to land 2 hours ahead of the 47 RM Commandos and secure the section of Gold Beach. The Commandos would follow and make their assault. The Commandos began loading their LCAs at around 7:30, just as the Hampshires were making their landing under heavy fire. The website D-Day Overlord writes that on June 6, 1944, at 9:30 a.m., the landing did not proceed as planned for the British Commandos, who suffered very heavy losses.
I'm sure you hear that quite a bit. Nothing went as planned at Port-en-Bessin. Takes the courage it just blows me away, the courage that was needed to lower that gate, lower the ramp in front of all that fire. It's just, my gosh. And where they're going, just so heavily fortified. You know, Omaha Beach was pretty brutal. They're all brutal. Some were a little more heavier fortified or whatever, but still, I mean, it just blows me away. So far this has been really good. Just a reminder, go support History Guys channel, please.
Forfar told the BBC program Destination D-Day that soon the big guns at Hamel and Longueuil had the range for the approaching LCAs. First to be hit was an LCA carrying half of Q Troop, he later wrote. 12 of the Marines were killed or drowned. 11 were seriously injured but reached the shore. Among the killed was the troop commander, Major Feasey, and troop medical orderly Lance Corporal Chatfield. Sergeant Donald Gibson remembered being in the LCA as it moved, but the next thing that he knew was that it was in a hospital, somewhere in England. Forfar told the BBC, as other LCAs moved in, they had to cross a wide band of obstacles constructed from steel girders, many of which were tipped with mines. Unfortunately, the state of the tide was such that many of the obstacles were just covered as 47 RM Commando moved in, and the LCAs passing over them were in great danger, being impaled on a steel girder and exploding on a mine. 4 of the other LCAs were impaled in this way and sank. Some of the occupants were killed. Marine George Amos was in one of the landing craft hit by German fire. He recalled to The Independent, "My memory is of sitting there, hands green with bile, when suddenly there was an almighty bang as our landing craft was hit. You felt it right through. I was carrying a Thompson submachine gun and a Bangalore torpedo, but when you're fully loaded, you can't swim, so you get rid of your equipment. I came ashore with nothing." He wasn't alone. Forfar told the BBC that in the sinkings, many weapons and much other equipment, such as wireless sets, had been lost. Marine Thomas Griffith's landing craft was hit going into Gold Beach with only 3 survivors. He was picked up by another craft, which was also hit. Yet another craft picked him up and returned to England. He landed again the next day. Lieutenant Peter Winter of Y Troop suffered a broken right leg, arm, and broken nose. He made it to the beach, finding it resembled a scrapyard of twisted landing craft and broken tanks, with many dead and wounded men lying on the sand. Forfar wrote that Winter's saddest memory is of lying on the beach, wishing the surviving members of his troop good luck as they formed up and moved off to begin their long march to Port-en-Bessin. The losses were high. Mustering on the beach, Commando had already lost 28 killed or drowned, 21 wounded, and 27 missing. Commando was already reduced to 340 men, many of whom had lost their equipment. Among the dead was Marine Scott of Q Troop, whose house the Commando had passed on the way to board the ships. He could not have known that look at his home from the lorry would be his last. Forfar writes that the depleted commando was now below the seawall, but was scattered along nearly a mile of beach rather than the 200 yards intended. He notes that some of the men who had to swim from the wrecked LCAs had lost their boots and even their trousers. Many had no weapons. Only one wireless set was recovered, and it was not working. The only mortar they had managed to get ashore had lost its sight. Very little seemed to be going right, Forfar dryly noted. Already, Operation Aubrey was behind schedule. D-Day Overlord writes that on June 6, 1944, at 9:30 a.m., the landing did not proceed as planned for the British commandos, who suffered very heavy losses. Delays in the planned schedules are accumulating, and the Royal Marine Commando reached the heights of Mount Cavalier, located southeast of Port-en-Bessin, only at nightfall. The move inland resulted in still more casualties, 1 dead and 11 wounded. D-Day Overlord continues. Although exhausted by the fighting of the day and their long march, the commandos launched several patrols in the direction of the city to define the outline of the German defensive system. They had, however, captured several prisoners, which allowed them to make up for some of the equipment losses. D-Day Overlord writes, they also recovered German war material to supplement the losses recorded during the disembarkation phase and since the beginning of the progression. Armed with the captured German equipment, they began their assault on the town the next day. But they had not recovered a critical piece of equipment. They still do not have a functional wireless. Their attack would have to be made without the ability to coordinate air or fire support. The wireless set was repaired later in the day, allowing the commandos to call in the assistance from the light cruiser HMS Emerald and 3 squadrons of Typhoon fighter bombers firing rockets. The commandos were now fighting fortified positions. Forfar notes a particularly deadly event. One troop was then detailed to attack the western feature. As the Marines moved up the open slope of the feature, rifle and machine gun fire was directed at them and grenades thrown down on them. The slope was also mined and had a few hidden flamethrowers. Using their field craft to good effect, the Marines had advanced more than halfway up the slope when disaster struck. The intelligence given to the commando was that the harbor was empty of any armed ships. But just before D-Day, and unknown to the commando, 2 flak had moved into the harbor. So-called flak ships were German patrol boats armed with multiple heavy machine guns for anti-aircraft defense. Forfar writes, they had a direct view of the Marines on the slope. Opening fire, they killed 12 and wounded 17, more than half the troop, within a few minutes. The troop had to withdraw. Another disaster occurred when a German counterattack overran the commandos' rear command group, with some of them being captured. D-Day Overlord writes, the situation seems desperate. Isolated, lacking ammunition and supplies, the English must quickly find a solution if they want to avoid defeat. The solution came when a reconnaissance group found a trench leading up the eastern defense. Captain Terence Cousins, only 22 years old, led 25 men up the trench. Forfar recalled, outnumbered 4-1 by the Germans, they fought their way up the feature through the concrete entrenchments, mines, and barbed wire defenses. The German positions were captured one by one, and before dawn, the eastern feature had been occupied. In the attack, Cousins was killed, felled by a grenade as he charged a concrete bunker. RoyalMarinesHistory.com writes, Captain Cousins was nominated for the Victoria Cross for his leadership, courage, and initiative, but was declined, much to the commandos' disgust. The town of Port-en-Bessin was believed...
I wonder why he was declined. I wonder. It seemed like it had the hallmarks of earning that medal, for sure. But it just goes to show you, I mean, things always go wrong, and then you get to the harbor, and then there's those boats there that weren't there. Now they're there. What are the odds? And they just happen to have these guns that are with the straight view on you on the cliffside there, hillside. But on the other hand, you didn't know about this trench, and being able to, you didn't know about it originally. You came across it, used it, and were able to get up the hill and start taking over stuff. So it's just so weird how fate can lead you in one way or the other. And it's just so out of your hands. No matter how much you plan, it's just out of your hands, especially when it comes to war. It's just, you hear stories like this all over all through history. It's just one move can decide so many things. It's just crazy.
Liberated by the following morning when the remaining German garrison surrendered. The commandos linked up with the men of the 16th U.S. Infantry, connecting the Omaha and Gold Beaches.
Awesome.
But then the commando, with an original strength of 420, had been reduced to less than 200 able men and officers. The capture of Port-en-Bessin was vital to the Allies not just because it connected the British and American sectors, but because Port-en-Bessin was the terminal point for one of the Pluto floating pipelines that would provide fuel to the Allied armies as they moved inland.
Huge.
Of the actions of 47 RM Commando, Lieutenant General Sir Brian Horrocks, who would command the Allied 30th Corps, said, "It is doubtful whether in their long distinguished history the Marines have ever achieved anything finer." And Commando, Major General and military historian Julian Thompson said, "In my opinion, the operation by 47 RM Commando at Port-en-Bessin was one of the great feats of arms of any unit, Royal Marines, Army, Navy, or Air Force, of any nation in the Second World War." Dr. Brian Forfar recorded his experiences with 47 Royal Marine Commando during the Second World War in a book that was entitled Omaha to the Scheldt, the story of 47 Marine Commando in World War II. He stayed with the Commando through the end of the war, returned to England, and became a leading pediatrician. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 96. Take a trip with me, the history guy, to Munich, Salzburg, and Vienna this October 12th to 19th.
If you're interested, contact him. This is, of course, an older video, so he's probably already gone. That was very good. Did not know about this battle. Did not know about Port-en-Bessin. I don't know why I have to say it like that. Port-en-Bessin. It's fun saying it like that. But yeah, brave men. Like we were just saying. You know, nothing ever goes the way you intended it to go. But yeah, good video. Good. I'm glad I got to see it because now I learned something more about the D-Day landings. There's just so much to learn, and that there's so much that I don't know about this particular event for sure. In fact, I didn't even know there was a port there. I always thought that was the reason why they kind of didn't think they were going to go. The Germans didn't think they would be going there because there wasn't a port. Little did they know they built their own and brought them over. But yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, they were literally cut in half or more by the time that thing ended. But wow. That's cool. God bless them. And thank you to all of them, for sure. Hope you enjoyed that. I did. I hope you learned something. I did. Go support History Guy. Links will be in the description to his channel and to the video. It's real important. Please, 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 I beg you. Go support History Guy. Hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. I appreciate all of you, and we'll continue on, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark. Yeah.